This is our block, block. This is our hustle. This is our block, block. And the way that we struggle, struggle. This is our block, block.
Welcome to Our Block. I'm your host, Raven Paris.
And I'm your host, Ron.
Today we'll be discussing a very serious topic today, disparities in the criminal justice system. But we're no experts, as we tell you all the time, so we have some guests that are joining us today.
With us today, we have Detective Dre Severino, Detective Ralph Horton, and Judge Michael Pearson. Thank you guys for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
So I wanted to share a statistic with you guys today. So about 22% of fatal police shootings, 47% of wrongful conviction exonerations, and 35% of individuals executed by the death penalty are African Americans. What are your thoughts on that?
How about the judge first, huh?
Put the judge in the hot seat.
Well, I think that's just reflective of the fact that the criminal justice system affects African Americans more so than any other group in our society. And those statistics that you give are indicative of the problem that not only African Americans, but low-income individuals in general have to deal with in terms of not being able to have a proper voice and represent themselves properly in the justice system.
Thank you for sharing that. I think the interesting part about this panel or this discussion today is because we see that the criminal justice system is broken and it's a lot of disparity against the minority communities or African American communities, but all three of you are men of color in this criminal justice system. What are you doing in this system to help aid or fix what's broken?
Great question.
I think we do a phenomenal job when we're out there conversing with the people that we serve. You know, we do this as a profession. We love it. We've been doing it for over 11 years now. So, you know, it's easy for us to converse with people of color or anybody in that respect because we come from those urban areas, those inner cities. So the conversing and building rapport, it's paramount because it's you know, building bridges. You're building that person up instead of bringing them down. I think at home, it starts at home like with anything. You know, when people, now it's always, you know, there's a lot of bashing of the badge. I understand that. I understand the history of where it came from. We come from a horrible culture of policing and what they did in the late 50s and 60s. So I can understand that, and I have empathy for that. But right now, modern day policing, the way we police totally different. It's nothing for me to get out of a patrol car, go and speak to somebody, a person of color, and build that respect and that rapport. Because that's all it takes, really, is looking the individual in their eyes. And when they see the realness of it, it's a totally different interaction.
So are you saying that respect or rapport alone, just to clear it up, is what your contribution is to fix the broken system?
I think it's an accumulation of both. Once you build that, once you get out that vehicle and speak to that individual, even if they come off harsh to you, it's okay. It's all about what you say, what comes out of your mouth. Because a lot of times, you deal with somebody that's irate. Our job is not to make it worse. Our job is to bring that person from a level 10 down to a level 5 and bring it, you know, and make them feel it's okay, that I'm not here to lock you up.
So you feel like communication basically is one of the things that can actually help bridge the gaps between the community and the...
Absolutely. Community policing has been paramount for the longest period of time. Some people have gone off and not done policing, community policing, by getting out of patrol cars, talking to your local businesses, getting familiar with the owners. You know, going to the local churches in your area, introducing yourself to the pastor and bishops. And everybody knows that once they get a sense of who you are as an individual.
They trust you more.
Exactly. And it's not about the badge.
Right.
It's about you as an individual, how you conduct yourself. Because I always say we're all agents of our department.
Right.
So you never want to put somebody out there that's a hothead. You shouldn't be a police officer to begin with. You got to have the right certain temperament to do this job.
Right, because
Go ahead, Andre.
the interactions with police officers, with the population, what the people tend to not realize is we're placed in, like you said, Judge, low-income area where everyone is struggling. So every
Everyone's a
interaction with a
target.
police officer is, we're coming up on your bad day.
Yep.
When you're having a good day, you don't need the police.
Yeah.
When your car gets stolen, that's a stressful moment. That's why we show up with respect and communicate. Sir, it's gonna be okay. This is the process, and that's how we police. H and I, we would get out of the car, and we're both from New York.
Yeah.
And being from New York, being from a low-income neighborhood, we know that like the grocery store, La Bodega, is where the neighborhood goes.
Yeah.
There, you have like your stylish guy, the prettiest girl of the neighborhood. Everyone goes to the store because that's where you get your local needs. We would stand outside of the store and clear the store out for grandma because they're loitering. See what I'm saying? Not violent, but just our presence. We used it in a positive way. Hey guys, how you guys doing? Everything good?
Yeah.
Cool. And all we do is stand there. That's it.
And the point that they're making is that it's imperative to have people of color in the criminal justice system to fix it. We can't expect others to come in and fix the system for us. We need to be represented in the system so we can identify, relate, and connect with people in ways that other groups can't.
And I think that's good. You talk about connecting with individuals. We are on Our Block, and this is a youth and young adult TV show. How do you feel that police officers or people in the criminal justice system are connecting with our youth so that they can feel comfortable enough to come to you, or maybe even grow up to be like you? Because right now, most youth sees it as a threat or something. I need to run away when a police officer comes, or this is not safe for me because of what has happened in the news. So what do you think are some things that a young person that you could do to make a young person feel more comfortable being around you, communicating, and feeling that you're a part of their community?
I believe what we already mentioned, we mentioned love, respect, and communication. That's where it starts. That's where all relationships starts. We're in uniform, right? People of color, detectives of color, and we're showing you, you can trust us, we're here to help. But the communication has to go both ways. You will have to want to speak to me, and you get to know that detective, that police officer.
What systems do we have in place, or
For the police-
programs,
not-
programs that we have in place to bridge that gap?
Absolutely. I'm speaking as Ralph Horton, even though I am a detective on the job. But with policing, we have community collaborations units that they go out and they deal specifically with the community. They deal with the churches, they deal with the businesses, any gripes and what's going on in a given area. You know what I mean? I think if, back in the days, I remember we had DARE. You know what I mean?
Yes, I was a part of DARE.
Right.
Okay.
And police,
centers.
right? And
Yeah.
police were active, going to schools, talking to you.
What happened to that?
I don't know. Everything just fell off. Even with the PAL systems in the city, that's huge to keep these kids busy, to keep them active. A lot of them like on the job when I was an instructor at some point. I was an instructor and with the city for about almost 4.5, 5 years. So I wanted to implement boxing.
Okay.
Because I played football, college, and I actually boxed as well.
Okay.
So I think that would be phenomenal.
And that allows you to release some steam.
Yeah.
Especially for our
Also,
youth.
that and that's another way of building that relationship
Yeah.
with somebody.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
I do have a question though, because I feel like a lot of that disconnect from our community and people who are in the system, such as you guys, I feel like when we see the police brutality and when we see the news that are broadcasted, the bad cops, it kind of puts everyone in the same boat, right? So on your end, what are y'all doing on your end to hold the other officers accountable for what is happening to help bridge that gap so we can know that all cops are not bad cops?
It makes our job harder because now we have to rebuild that trust. Something we mentioned earlier, the PAL centers, that's not, and this is me speaking as an individual, Dre Severino, we don't control that funding. Whatever city that is, the city has to allocate, find a building and say, hey, because all we want to do is be with kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we want to, I would love to teach a kid in an inner city how to tie a tie. You see what I'm saying? Because someone taught me.
Yeah.
But I can't do that if I don't have that structure,
Yeah.
which is that city, you know, they have to allocate it.
Judge Pearson, question to you. The statistics show that from a child's test scores in grade school, whether or not they do well on those tests, it helps them forecast how many detention centers that they build in the future. Do you feel like that's something that is plaguing the community, or something that's broken in the criminal justice system? Or how do you feel about that?
There's a direct correlation between education and incarceration. The more likely to drop out of school, you're more likely to be incarcerated. You were talking earlier about programs, and in my jurisdiction, I supervise a juvenile drug court. And one of the most essential components of the program is GED. We make sure that we get these kids back in school, even if they've been expelled from the public school system. We get them back into school and get them educated, because if they can have an education, then they have other means and other ways to explore supporting themselves without being on the streets. So yes, there is a direct correlation between test scores and incarcerations, but it's because we're not educating the kids. And once we see that there is that gap, we need to step up and try to improve the education component before they get to the part where they're incarcerated.
I'm gonna piggyback on what Dre said, as far as, you know, when we started, me and Dre, is a podcast. It's called Silverback Chronicles Podcast, and that's all about bridging the gap between community and police, because we understand that it's paramount that we have this relationship with the community. We love what we do, and we want them to love us. And doing that, holding officers accountable is all that we're about. Like when we was out in the streets patrolling, an officer couldn't do nothing around us because they know how we operate. You know what I mean? So if we found out that they did something, or if they did it like on our watch, you're going to be held accountable. Let's go. You have to. I'm not, and you know what? The reason why, because what we have this job to, we held it to we're held to a high standard.
Yes.
And we love that
To protect and serve.
at all times, and showing respect to any and everybody. So if an officer did something dirty, if I let him get away with that and turn my back, I'm as dirty as him.
Yes.
And that reflects me as a man, first and foremost, and what I stand for.
Yeah.
Then the badge.
Right.
Yeah.
And if I could chime in on that, I think it's really important that the court system hold police officers accountable
Come on,
when they break the
yes.
law. I can tell you, even before I became a judge, when I was a young prosecutor, I attempted to prosecute some dirty police officers, and I saw how the court system treated them differently than
Others.
regular defendants. And I vowed that once I got on the bench, I was never going to show any special accommodation for a police officer. In fact, to be honest with you, if you're a dirty cop, in some ways you need to be held more accountable
'cause you know
than the
better.
average citizen, because you have breached a public trust
Yes.
and created their job, made their job that much more difficult. So they definitely have to be held accountable, for
Me
sure.
doing the job, I thank you for that, because a dirty cop, in our opinion,
Yeah.
belongs under the jail.
Absolutely.
Gotta go.
Straight up.
And we hold everybody accountable.
And
It
we-
doesn't matter. Like people, even officers tend to forget. Yo, this job is a privilege.
Yes.
It's a privilege to do this job. And what we deal with, we understand what we deal with.
Every
Serving the
day.
city. It's every day. Nobody understands that, and that's okay. But come, talk to us. Come for a ride along.
May I ask, what made you guys want to even get into these shoes? Because these shoes are not easy to be filled, and everyone also don't have that desire to want to be a cop or want to be a judge. So what actually made you want to become those?
I grew up in a very drug-infested neighborhood
Okay.
in the Bronx, and I just felt like that's not cool. I had a godfather; he was a police officer.
Okay.
And just to cut it short, I would say Eddie Murphy in Beverly Hills Cop changed my life. I thought Eddie Murphy was the coolest dude. You know, he leaves Detroit, he goes to LA, he meets these guys and they solve cases, but he's fly with it and thinking outside of the
saw
box.
some of your stuff and
And
like,
I was
I
like,
can do that.
that's what I want to do.
Okay.
For me, it's something that I always wanted to do. Like my biggest passion was football. you know, growing up. I played that since the age of 7. But what made it even easier for me to join this lifestyle and serve the people was, as I grew up, you know, from Long Island, I seen racism
Yeah.
from police and how they treated blacks and brown people. And that pissed me off. And how they just disrespect people and got away with it.
Because you got a badge.
And I'm like, yo, you a square. So I guess the badge make you feel tough.
Yep.
So I seen that. And that just, it lit a fire under me. Because I'm like, bro, like you're not going to talk like that if you didn't have that uniform. I know that first and foremost. You look them in the eyes, you see the kitty in them. Seriously. So that's what made it easy for me to do this, because, you know, I wanted to do the right thing, you know, and just being treated differently. I saw it. And racism, it still exists to this day.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's unfortunate. But it takes real ones like us to get out there and put feet to the concrete just to show that there is change. And that's why we want, everybody has a voice. That's why we want everybody to come on our podcast, talk to us.
Yeah. Judge?
Well, for me, just like he had a passion for athletics, I had a passion for advocacy,
Okay.
giving a voice to the voiceless. And not only was I a prosecutor, I was a defense attorney, but I realized giving that voice, whether it was to my client who was being prosecuted for some type of heinous crime, or whether or not it was representing the state because this little old lady has been robbed and is trying to get some closure for this criminal event that occurred in her life, that voice, it doesn't mean anything unless the person receiving and hearing the voice is someone who's fair and someone who can relate to that community. And that's the reason I want to become a judge and get on the bench, because I realize you can have that voice and you can advocate for somebody, but who are you advocating to? That's what's imperative.
To make
That they
that
actually
final
hear
decision.
what's being said.
And the great thing is that you guys are here to talk about that. We do have some young people in the audience who I know have burning questions and want to be able to ask them. So we have somebody in the audience who would love to come down and ask a question to our panel.
We
All right,
have
sure,
one.
come on down.
Welcome to our blog.
blog.
Hello.
What's your name?
My name is Elijah,
How old are you?
16.
Nice. What's your question?
This question is for Judge Pearson. Since public defenders are sworn to serve lower income people to their best ability, when they don't because of underpaid or understaffed, should they also be prosecuted for poor service?
Good
That's
question.
an interesting question. So if they're not living up to their responsibilities because they're underpaid or understaffed, that's not really a criminal offense. While we need to do something about it, we need to improve funding, we need to improve staffing, and try to make sure that each public defender has a balanced caseload so they can present a fair and reasonable defense for each one of their clients, to actually prosecute them for the government's failure to adequately supply them with what they need. That wouldn't be appropriate.
Thank
but
you.
That's an excellent question. Thank you.
So, Judge, if the public defender cannot be prosecuted, how will we resolve that type of situation?
I think this is a perfect example of where we need people of color to be involved in the criminal justice system and in government in general. I know when I've had situations where I've seen someone who has been convicted by a jury, and I thought that they received inadequate representation. And that certainly factored into my decision making in terms of a sentence that I gave that individual, because I understand that the system sometimes is unjust. And we need to have individuals involved in the system to make up that difference, to try to repair the situation. Now, you also have legal means. You have ineffective assistance of counsel claims that you can make against that particular public defender. But in the meantime, you have someone who's in jail, who is serving time. And so if you have people involved in the system who can somehow remedy or take an approach to remedy the situation until it can be rectified by the court system, that helps. But that's the best we can do. But we need to get involved. We need to vote for people who are going to properly fund our public defenders
Yeah.
or our court system. We need to vote for and get involved. We can't wait to be upset
Till it's too
about
late.
government until it affects us. We need to be more aggressive in getting involved so we can create a government that really represents
Us.
us.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for that, Judge. That was actually a really great question. I really enjoyed that. Do we have any other people in the audience who would love to ask a question? I mean, a burning question. Yes.
We have someone burning up there. Come and join us.
Come on and join us.
All right, my name is Michael, and I know you kind of already touched about this earlier, but can you talk more about the importance of having people of color in government as judges, prosecutors, public defenders, etc.?
Well, the court system is like any other facet of life. If it's something that you're familiar with, then you can relate to it. And if it's something that's completely unfamiliar to you, you can't relate to it. So when people come in front of you, and if there are people of color, people that you recognize, people that you can connect with, that come from your communities, you can understand what it's like to be in their shoes. And they realize that they're advocating to someone who can relate to them. So it's important that we have individuals who are reflective of the community that's coming before the courts. And it's also, this ties back into the previous question, in that it's truly imperative that we get involved in our entire government, not just the court system, but we take an active role in terms of funding for our government entities, in terms of representation, not only, like I said, in the courts, but in the police department, in the governor's office, in the mayor's office, and all these entities. If you have individuals who are representative of the community involved in these decision-making heads of departments, then they can make decisions that better affect our communities.
Makes sense.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other guests who would like to come up and speak?
All right, come on down.
Welcome to our block.
My name is Jaden, and I'm 14 years old, and my question is, why do black or brown people get more time when committing the same crime as white people?
We actually have statistics that show it's 5 times more than white Americans. So why is that?
To be frank, it's because our country is built on the foundation of racism.
Come on, let's get into it.
And until we change the cultural mindset that when you see an African American young man, you can somehow automatically be afraid.
Yes.
It's reasonable to be afraid. When you're Trayvon Martin, you're 17 years old, and you're going home, minding your business.
Yep.
For some reason, George Zimmerman, it's reasonable for him to be afraid of this young man. And the only reason he's afraid is because of his skin color and because of the neighborhood that he was in. Supposedly he wasn't supposed to be in that neighborhood. And until we erase that mindset from our culture at large, it's not going to change in the court system unless you come before an individual like me or you're dealing with police officers like them. But until the mindset of America changes, then it's going to permeate throughout all facets of our society, not just the courts, financial institutions. When you go try to buy a car or get a mortgage or you try to get a job, we have to erase this mindset that somehow people of color that's equivalent to evil or negativity in some way.
That's a great point, Judge. And my question to you is, can we actually erase the mindset? Is that something that is actually possible?
It's going to take generations. It's
think
going to
we're
take,
too deep.
you can't do it overnight. It's going to take one step at a time. It takes involvement by the community. We need to get involved, stop being apathetic about who we're voting for or even going to vote, or who the judge is going to be, or getting involved. You need to get active. If we get more active and more vocal, slow change will occur.
And a lot of people in the African American community or minority communities feel like their activity really doesn't equate or mean anything. What would you say to somebody who feels like, okay, if I get involved, it's still nothing changes, nothing still happens.
Such as voting.
Such as voting. So, how do you make a person who's been around for a very long time and been seeing the same thing over and over again, how do you help them see differently or to feel like their help does impact?
You have to realize that change is not a snapshot, it's a
Yeah.
movie, right? It's not gonna happen, you can't just expect it to happen overnight. It's a long progression that is going to occur. You have to look back at history. Look how far we've come since Jim Crow.
Yes.
But it took little steps to get there. And it's going to continue to take little steps to get where we need to be. But to expect change instantaneously, I know in this Instagram world that we
It's
live, we
unbelievable.
expect things to happen overnight, but people don't change overnight.
I also have another insight. How about a training? Because you said like it has to be taught the mindset. So are there any trainings in place for judges or officers where as though we can try to erase that?
Like an unconscious bias training.
Yeah, or more so allow them to be more familiar with different cultures and get out of that racism mindset, because I feel like that's what it boils down to. So are there any trainings in place that can help?
Yes, we do. I can tell you that in my jurisdiction, we do have mandatory training for judges and for people involved in the court system that deal with unconscious bias and other issues that affect us. And those trainings help, but there's nothing like
Real life
being
experience.
raised in that community. And that's what we really need, individuals that come from our community to
And
be
those in those-
involved in the system.
I agree.
Can I piggyback on that? I agree with that, but we need more because we got our white brothers and sisters that do this job thorough,
Yes.
and they love the culture, they love everything, and they bleed blue, and they bleed taking care of our civilians. So I don't want just because you're black, you should be able to come and police this community. That's BS. Anybody should, if you take the proper measures to learn that particular culture and become part of it. How is there going to be change if you just want blacks to
Right.
to
Diversity got to be included.
how could there be change if you just want I just want my black guy to come in here and police? He's familiar. No. How's there change? Get our white brothers and sisters, come learn this culture,
Yes.
learn this neighborhood, let them know how you are, let them know you as an individual first,
Right.
so they could trust who you are. That's how you build and seek change.
I like that. Yeah.
Ultimately.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Feeling my hand rise. Is there another person out here who would love to ask a question, another young person? Raise your hand.
There you
Okay,
go.
come on
Come in.
down.
Hi.
Hi, welcome to our blog. What's your name?
My name is Juhan.
How old are you,
you?
Juwan?
I'm 13.
Okay.
Very nice.
Welcome.
What's your question?
My question is, I watched the movie Black and Blue directed by Dean Taylor. In the movie, they emphasize the blue code of silence and solidarity amongst the police officers and the officials of the law. Does this code really exist, and do you think it can be detrimental to the growth and development of the communities when the truth is withheld to the process of those in blue?
That's a phenomenal
That is
question.
an amazing question.
Well said. Wow.
Wow.
I guess before we got on, there was always that blue silence of, you always protect your brother and sister. That has changed. We hold everybody accountable. But the reason why it had to change, because it affects the community
Right.
in a huge way, where people are arrested for things they shouldn't be arrested for. That's why there's dirty cops. Unfortunately, there are a lot of dirty cops. But that's why we're out here to show the example. There are phenomenal police officers that do this job every day, and we hold everybody accountable. And the reason why we do that, because we love what we do as a profession. And first and foremost, we're individuals, right before the badge. The badge is just, it's the uniform. But the person believes you, that individual, before they believe the badge. And once you're a phenomenal reflection of your department, it's paramount to your success. It's paramount to actually the city, the people that you serve, and believe in you. Once you show them that you're different. It's not always in talks. You got to get out there and show them that you're different. And show them that if my partner messes up, if he treats somebody like trash, I'm going to check him first and foremost, and then let that individual know, listen, if you would like, you can file charges in reference to this officer. You can go down to the district and speak to the sergeant at this desk sergeant. So there's things that we actively do just to let the public know that, listen, we love you, and we're here for you, and we're here to do the right job.
To add to that, that's what the news does not catch when, a police officer, we always say, we don't need blue silence because we're not doing nothing wrong. So
Exactly.
everything I'm doing could be in the light because I'm not doing anything wrong. You're only silent if you're doing something, hey, it's a secret. But if we're doing everything right, we're serving the community, you see us here. When I speak to you in front of everyone so that it's fair and impartial, then I don't need to hide anything. So that movie, I saw it and it wasn't, because of that, like the past is the reason why now we have detectives, officers that are not afraid of like, hey, calm down,
Yeah.
you're doing too much. But as an individual, you have to be comfortable with yourself and knowing that you have to check another
speak
grown-ass person. And that's how we keep, it's the check and balance that happens. But and as an individual, you have to be willing to do that. Because things go wrong sometimes.
I was about to say, I have heard where as though some cops have spoke out against the bad cops and then their jobs end up being taken from them, or, the whatever alliance may be out there, they just end up getting the short end of the stick for trying to speak up.
Absolutely.
And that sucks.
And I think the question becomes, you said that has changed, but when did it change?
I can only speak from us getting on the job.
Yeah.
And hearing stories of it in the past.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because me as an individual, as a man, I'm not gonna allow none of that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call it buck the way it is. I'm a black and white kind of guy. There's no gray area with me. So if it is what it is, then that's what it is. I'm not afraid to check anybody or anyone.
So
I'm not afraid to check a lieutenant, a captain. Doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, I'm a man. If you messed up, you messed up. If you got a white shirt and doesn't mean anything, you messed up.
Something happened to me, right, in my detective unit. Can I tell a quick story?
Sure. Yes.
This is a true story, right? I had a sergeant supervisor who was very friendly. And to this unit where I was at, we ended up getting a new detective, an attractive female. He spoke to her in a way that wasn't professional. I spoke up for her. He transferred me out of the unit, right? I'm like, it's fine, because I went to bed knowing that I defended her, because we don't do bullies. He tried to bully her into doing something on a scene, and I was like, you can't do that in front of me. Before you know it, I'm transferred out, and I took, I was upset, but her and I developed a friendship. She's like, yo, thank you so much, because not a lot of women,
Have someone to do that for them.
right, that has somebody,
Especially
like a
men
big
that
bro
would
to
think-
protect them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And to make a long story short, I can speak about it because she's no longer with the department, but she ended up filing a complaint against him federally, and I got back to where I belong.
Come on.
And it was beautiful. He was gone, and now I'm back. So
But
we do speak up.
It's unfortunate, but you have this in all walks of life and all careers, where you feel people have their title, and they take it for granted. They like to abuse their authority of ranking,
Yes.
and that's not gonna work with me, because I don't care who you are, of what ranking. That doesn't bother me. If you're wrong, you're wrong. A lot of officers don't like to speak up. That's just based on them. A lot of people like to become part of a crew.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? They want to blend in and be that cool guy. I can't teach that. That's not me. I'm real. I was born and raised off of that.
Yeah.
That's part of my DNA. Unfortunately, you got a lot of officers that are they're very timid, and they seek love from, other people. And they want to, because they're part of the crowd. They want to be part of that crowd. And that's, it's sad, it's unfortunate. And we don't need those people on the job.
Definitely.
You do not need to serve these communities, because you're more worse than anything.
Detective Severino, Detective Horton, Judge Pearson, thank you so much for coming on our block and sharing and answering questions. The information that you provided added so much value here today, and we appreciate that.
Yes, thank you for being so transparent and vulnerable with us and with our audience today. We know we put y'all in the hot seat, but that's what we do here at our block. And however we can continue to bridge the gaps, please let us know. That's what we like to do.
Yeah, and if anybody out here, our viewers or people in the audience, have any more questions or concerns, feel free to hit us up on Instagram, Our Block TV Show, and we'll answer all the questions that you may have.
I'm your host, Raven Paris.
And I'm your host, Ron, and we have the flyest, the youngest DJ in the game.
DJ Knowledge, give it
on
up
the
for our
ones
DJ.
and twos. Yes. Thank you. And give yourselves a hand for being here today.
Yes.
We couldn't do this without
you.
you.
Oh, jeez.
Yes. You know, this week we was on our block, but next week we may
gonna
be on
your
your
block.
block. Thank you.
This is our block, block. This is our hustle.